Hi, welcome to episode 7 of this tutorial. In this episode we're going to create the backgrounds for the game. For the backgrounds we're going to use brick walls on the top and bottom of the game screen. And just like the missiles, when it collides with this, the helicopter will explode and be reset. So this will be one rectangle, and to create the background we're going to use an array of these rectangles lined up after each other. And they'll make up the borders on the top and the bottom of the screen. So let's get started. We're going to create a new Java class. We'll call it top border. And we'll create one for bottom border. We'll call it top border. These classes are going to be very similar to each other, minor differences. But it's easier to understand if you put them in separate classes too. Oh, don't forget to extend game object. So as we look at this brick image, we see that the width is about 20 by 201. So we're going to make every border object have a width of 20, and we'll have a different height depending on what we want to set it to. So we'll see how this all works out soon. So remember when we created the move speed final back in like one of the earlier videos here, and we set the background to move at this speed? We also want the borders to move at the same speed of the background. And there we go, this is going to be the border for the top. And the bottom border is going to be a little slightly different. Like the top border will have an image, which will be the brick wall. So notice how we don't take in the height in this constructor, but in the top border we do take in the height. This is because every single border is going to have a height of 200. Because this border will be off on the bottom of the screen, it doesn't matter what the height is. It actually doesn't matter. It could be 200, 150, as long as it goes off the screen. It could be 170. So 200 is extra safe. It should always extend off the screen, so we won't see the entire border because it'll be going off the screen. forget. Alt enter to import. Alright, let's create the borders. So the borders are going to be in array lists. So we're going to create the borders in the update method. And Alright, we have to create two more variables. So the border is going to have a maximum and a minimum border height. And as the game progresses and the score gets higher, player gets deeper into the game, this maximum and minimum height is going to increase. And therefore it's going to be more difficult. The borders are going to take up more of the screen. And we'll also create progress denominator that you can change for the difficulty of the game. We'll set it as 20. So we want to know if the border is going to be going up or down. If the border is going to be moving up or down, and they're going to both start as true, so both borders are going to be moving downwards initially. But then when they reach the maximum or minimum border height, they'll reverse positions and move the other way. And we'll see this all come together in a second. Actually, so we're going to create two separate methods since there's going to be a lot of code here. Take bottom border. And here in the update method we'll call before we do that, we're going to change our minimum and maximum height. Right here we're going to cap it. The maximum border height is greater than the entire game height over 4. So here the maximum border height and the minimum border height increase as the score goes up. So as the height increases, the borders take up more of the screen, the game becomes more difficult. The purpose of the game is to see how far you can go without hitting the borders and dodging the missiles, and how high your score can get to. And let's create these borders. So the borders are going to have a pattern. They're going to go up until they reach the maximum border height, and then they're going to start going down until they reach the minimum border height, and then they're going to start going back up. And the maximum and minimum border height are going to increase as the score increases. But what we want to do to break this pattern is, for the top border, every 50 points, insert randomly placed. This will make the game more interesting. So top border dot size -1 is the last border in the array. It's going to add to that plus 20. Zero as the Y position. The X position is going to be the last border in the array list of top borders plus 20. So it's going to be right after the last border in the array of borders. There we go. So the height of this, which is the third parameter in the constructor, is going to be a random number from the max border height, from 1 to the max border height. And we'll do this for the bottom border. We'll do it every 40 points. The bottom border will randomly break the pattern. What's wrong with this? There we go. Now let's update the borders. Update the top border first. So if the top border that we're looping through currently has an x position of -20, it's moved off the map, we're going to remove it. We're going to remove that element of the array list. Remove element of array list. Replace it by adding a new one. And then we're going to replace it. So topBorder.get topBorder.size -1 is basically retrieving the last element in the array list, the last border created, the most recent one. We're going to get the height. So if the last element is greater than the max border height or less than the minimum border height, we're going to adjust top down accordingly, so that the borders that are made after that will go in the right direction. And then we'll create if top down, else. So the x position is going to be the get x of the last element in the array plus 20. That's going to be the new x position. That's the x parameter. Now the y parameter is going to be 0. And now for the height parameter, if it's top down, so you want the border to be going down, we'll get we're going to get the height of the last element of the border, the most recent one, plus 1, since we want it to go down. And now I'm just going to copy paste this. And all of the parameters are the same except for the height, we want the height to be smaller. So instead of +1, we'll do -1. And that should be it. Now we're going to do the same thing for the bottom border. First, we're just going to call the update method. If border is moving off screen, remove it and add a corresponding new one. And we're actually just going to copy this code right here for top down and switch everything to bot down. And here we'll be adding the new borders. So if bot down, we'll be adding borders that is one less, is one down from the last border in the array, and else we'll be adding a border that is one more than the last element in the array. So the x position is going to be +20, the last element in the array +20, since the width is 20. The y position is going to be the last element of the array, the most recent border, +1. So it's going to be moving downwards, upwards, downwards, because, yeah, downwards. We'll just copy and paste this. If it's not bot down, instead of +1, it'll be -1. It'll be moving upwards. So this basically updates the borders, checks if one of the borders is moving off the screen, and then if it is, it will remove that element of the array and compensate by adding a new one that's behind the screen. and it will be based off of maximum and minimum border height, which will be determined by the player's score. So as the player's score goes up, the maximum and minimum border height go up, and the borders start to take up more and more of the screen. Now, one last thing we have to do is create the initial borders. And we'll just do that. Oh yeah, we have to draw the borders too. And we'll create the initial borders in the new game method. And this will be called every time the player dies and we want to reset the game. So first we'll clear everything. We'll reset the minimum border height to 5. And what was the maximum border height? 30. Oh yeah. Clear the missiles. Clear the entire array list. Clear the smoke pops. We'll reset the score. Reset the player position. Everything's going back to the beginning. And create the initial borders. Because these are only updating, these two methods are only updating and adding to the borders, but we need to create the initial borders for them to have something to add to. So this loop will create borders until they are width plus 40 off the screen. So this will create enough borders that they go off the screen slightly. So this will create one element of the border, one rectangle. For the first one. This will be at a position of 0, 10, or with a height of 10, and the next position of 0. And this will be the first border ever created. Just one slim rectangle, and then this else will be adding on to that. So get the last element in the array, get the height of that last element in the array, and add 1 to it. First order ever created. Adding borders onto first and borders until the screen and we'll create a boolean up here called new game created. And we want new game created to be called whenever the player dies. So here in the update method we have player.getPlayer that does all this. Else, if the player is no longer playing because he collided with something, new game, we're going to call new game. If new game created is false. So the player collides, new game created becomes false. Because it's false, it will call new game created becomes true after calling it. And this will continue to repeat while the player is not playing, which is fine. We'll add some code for a timer later. What's the problem here? Oh. Alright, we're back. And what we're going to do is fix some errors I noticed after going over the code. That were causing some serious issues with running the game. So the first thing we're going to do is, this method is called update top border, but it does everything with the bottom borders. So let's rename that update bottom border. This one's the opposite, so we'll rename this update top border. And what we did wrong, one parenthesis was causing the problem before. This parenthesis should be over here. The reason there was an out of memory error was because it was creating an infinite amount of bottom borders. We only want to create a new bottom border when one of them is removed. But when the parenthesis was here, it was just removing it and then creating an insane amount of bottom borders that was just causing the game to crash. So something else we have to do is create the collision for the borders. So here in update, we'll have if there's a collision between the top border and the player, player.set playing false. And same thing for the top border. Oh, I did it again. And one more thing we want to do when we create the missiles, we don't want them to intersect with the borders. We don't want the missiles to be in the borders at all. So here when we add the new missiles, here when we generate the random number, for the y value of the missile, we want to exclude that random number times height minus max border height times 2. Plus, so this will be, the range of the random number will be, right, currently from 1 to the range where the missile can be. So we've got the right range, now we need to adjust it by adding the max border height plus 15. Actually, shouldn't be. So this should mean that the missiles don't intersect with the borders. They will always be generated within the borders. Let's test it now. Nice. Nice. Oh, there we go. There's a reset. Oh, there's a reset. There's... Oh, we need to reset the acceleration so that doesn't happen. So a new game. Player.reset UI. Alright, but... yeah, besides that, let's just double check that. And let's keep an eye out for the missiles, make sure they don't come in between the borders. Why is that happening? It looks good. Why do we have this printing out? I wonder about... try this one last time. There we go. Looks nice. In the next episode, we're going to add the explosions. It's going to be fun. And the text, of course, for the score. We're almost done here. It's coming out to be a pretty good game. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you. Oh yeah, also any feedback would be appreciated on these videos. This is my first YouTube tutorial series, and I would love any sort of feedback, what I could be doing better, explaining better. The logic for the borders was a little bit confusing. I don't think I did a good job explaining it. But if you're comfortable with Java, you can sort of dive into it and come to understand it yourself pretty quickly. It's not that complicated. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time. Hi. Alright, there's one last quick fix we have to put in. See the code in the update bottom border method? The logic for determining if the border will be moving down or up is a little off. Instead of get height, it should be get y. Because the height remains consistent for the bottom border. It's 200 every time, remember? So it should be get y, and if it's less than or equal to height minus max border height. Then top down will be true. Same thing here, we'll be doing get y, not get height. If it's greater than or equal to height minus minimum border height, then bot down will be false. It will be going up, not down. And that's all for this video. I'll see you next time.